everyone. Welcome to Longe Talks. I am Jessica Bran, a gerontologist, scientist, and researcher specializing in mental health and cognitive rehabilitation. Today, I want to thank the presence of two very important people in the area of longevity to enrich our knowledge. So thank you, Bradley, and thank you, Fran. I especially want to thank you, Bradley, for being here with us and accepting to perform this amazing live. So it's an honor to talk to you, Bradley. So please tell us, all right, who is Bradley?
That's a big question to start with. I'm a demographic futurist. I'm somebody who takes a look at large amounts of data, both historical and projected, and makes some assumptions about what our future looks like. And when we overlay that with historical norms, historical behaviors, we get a pretty clear sense of what the future can look like. So rural counties really became my first point of fascination. And I began looking around the world for other examples of where this was happening. And it turned out the United States wasn't alone. Other countries were much further ahead of the longevity curve, places like Japan, Germany, Italy, the first three nations to become part of this new era that I call the super age, where at least 1 out of 2 people are going to be over the age of 65. And it's just really a fascinating subject for me. And it's something that I want to share with large numbers of people. And that's why I wrote the book and really dived into deep research on the subject.
Can you introduce yourself, Fran, please?
My name is Fran Winandy. I am a consultant in the area of age diversity, researcher and writer in the area of ageism. Recently, you said in an interview that countries with initiatives to support longevity could have GDP growth or growth of more 20%. Could you talk a little bit about this?
A number of different angles to look at through this lens. The first is simply the labor market. We know that the more people that are in the labor market, the faster the economy grows. And when we enter the super age period, it's the period that precedes population decline or population contraction. So in a country like Japan, for example, that's at the very head of this change, they've already been in a period of population contraction. They're not like the US or Brazil, where that both have very proactive immigration policies. We allow a lot of people in. Japan is a relatively mono-cultural country. So because of that, Japan loses a large number of people each year. In fact, in 2021, Japan's population contracted by 644,000 people. So in order to expand the economy, in order for businesses to continue to grow in Japan, they need to open up their offerings. They need to engage older populations in work for longer periods of time. And I think this gets to a subject that's near and dear to your heart. They need to combat ageism, and they need to expand product and service offerings and turn their attentions either to older markets or, in my opinion, markets that are generationally diverse.
Thank you. And what do you suggest to companies to fight ageism and invest in age diversity?
There really isn't a choice for companies anymore. For a long time, most of us in aging and longevity said, wouldn't it be nice if we engaged older people in the workplace? But there wasn't really a market demand for it quite yet. That's because for decades, we had this incredibly large number of people in the labor pool that were both young and cheap. And because of that, it's creating a really tight labor market. The only way to really get away from that is for businesses to consider opening up their labor pool. Historically, they relied on young workers coming in who were cheap or cheap workers that they could outsource overseas. But this change, this demographic change that we're in, isn't just limited to the United States. It isn't just limited to Brazil. It's happening virtually everywhere, with the exception of a few locales, including sub-Saharan Africa Indonesia, perhaps the Philippines. There are very few places on the American continent now where you can find really high birth rates anymore. They just don't exist. We have to look to older populations if we really want to keep our economies on track, because if we don't, labor force costs actually influence the inflationary costs of goods and services.
Hi, Bradley. This is Eliane Chrysler. I am a career consultant focused on professional after 50 years. My first question for you is, according to research and perceptions, how your careers behave with age inversion, comparing male in developed and developing countries?
Obviously, every country has their own realities that they face with demographic change. In highly technical countries that produce high value products, places like Germany, for example, they've made really critical investments in their work infrastructure. But time and time again, it comes back to the fundamental issues around the economy of supply and demand. And businesses will have no choice at the end of the day but to adapt to the new demographic reality.
In Brazil, we are in a process of accelerating the aging of the population. How should companies prepare for this moment?
So I think that Brazil is in a unique position. It's far different of a position than the United States. So please take my recommendations from that perspective, since I'm an American citizen but have studied the world. The United States has been adjusting its population for over 200 years. It really started in the 1700s, the late 1700s, during the first industrial revolution. However, in places like Brazil, the speed of the transformation has happened at a much faster pace, which means that you have no choice but to act much more quickly than we had to here. In fact, Brazil has aged in about 30 years what it's taken the United States over 150 years to do. If Brazil made some critical investments in design of the physical environment, the built environment, it would help more people get around, more people stay connected, more people continuing to work, and then more people would continue to be consumers. They would keep feeding that economy in Brazil so it continues to grow.
I have two questions for you. First of all, I want to know what kind of argument we can use to convince the companies to look for this process and to work with this process.
Businesses are here to make money. And time again, businesses listen to people like us who talk about change when we can make a convincing and sound economic argument. And the economic argument around this is, if you do not act, the economy will contract. You can't argue with the statistics. Our populations are simply getting older. We are having fewer children year on year. And because of that, the global population will stop growing. So because of that, business in Brazil needs to make some critical decisions. First and foremost, do they want to continue serving the people of Brazil? Do they want to continue to employ the people of Brazil? If the answers to both of those questions are yes, then they need to really think hard and long about how they engage older people as workers and consumers. But I think if any business is really serious about growing or at least maintaining their position within an economy like Brazil's, they have no choice but to adjust.
And do you think that it's a good idea to start with public policies?
The United States has public policies that support older workers. I'm a big believer in the market and the market's ability to really handle change, especially when it's presented in a way that you can't deny. We are getting older. Our societies are aging. It's happening at a very rapid pace. There's no clear sign that any time in the near future, there'll be a turnaround in our populations.
When and why did you decide to write your book?
So the book is really to give an examination of what were our foundational ideas and issues around age. What would happen if we simply did nothing and we kept on our current path, and what the real opportunities are for the future. Because I fundamentally believe that we have to examine the past to see the present as well as what's coming next. So, even to the previous question about ageism has been around as long as we've had recorded history. So this isn't something that's going to change overnight. We can certainly fight against it. But as I always say, our attitudes towards older people have always remained consistently inconsistent. And we're just entering a period now because of the demographic profile where older people will become a more important and more influential part of our population than perhaps ever before in human history.
Bradley, Fran, and Eli, thank you very much for taking time to speak here on the channel and for bringing us relevant information to our viewers too.
All right, we'll talk soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.